In 2018, a crack YouTube unit was sent to social media prison by an algorithm for the crime they didn't commit. These producers promptly escaped from a maximum security social media stockade to the internet underground. Today, still wanted by social media, they survive as producers of fortune. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire the Smash Team.
It's space weather!
Looking at the sun in 171 angstroms. See an active region rising in the east. A bunch of magnetic complexity on the west. No sunspots yet, as that active region is not yet facing the Earth. We see a small coronal hole rotating in here at the 193 angstroms view. Just above the solar equator there. And let's look at the magnetic lines. There's the magnetic field lines. Keep in mind, the Earth is experiencing a drought of 6+ magnitude earthquakes. So we are looking for magnetic connections to coronal holes, which will raise that risk even higher, especially in places like New Zealand, Oceania, Western South America, and Japan. And looking at the real-time solar wind, we actually see a negative BZ angle just kicked up in the last hour. We see no ongoing 180 degree or nearby phi angle signal there. That's the blue pane second from the top. For new viewers, a 180 degree phi angle, especially for an extended period of time, is associated with earthquake risk due to coronal hole magnetic connections. Solar wind density is up to 8.07 protons per cubic centimeter. We see a small uptick in the solar wind also in the past hour or two. It's up to 472 kilometers per second. Look at spaceweather.com. It looks like there's a possibility of a co-rotating interaction region hitting the Earth's magnetic field on Valentine's Day. And 10.7 centimeter radial flux is still at 70. As this active region rises, probably a sunspot, we would not be surprised to see that go up. Also, interesting article here about a snowstorm hitting Hawaii. Maui was blanketed in snow at altitudes as low as 6,200 feet, the lowest altitude snowfall since 1952. We'll leave links to spaceweather.com so you can appreciate all of their better aspects. Well, let's look at spaceweathernews.com. Thanks to Ben Davidson, we've got this site with all this data shoved together. We see a tiny uptick in the X-ray flux there. Actually, there was a B-class flare. Tiny little B-class flare there at about 0600 universal time. See the magnetometer. See the magnetometer showing some spiky perturbations there at the bottom of the range. Keep in mind that is midnight local time for the satellite. And we'll be looking at the gong too to see what the environment's like in a moment. And we see just at the end of last night, we see the KP went all the way from 0 up to 3, then back to 2, and now we're back to a KP of 3. Here's your Cygnets forecast that has not been updated. That's through the 16th. And there's the electron flux, which looks like it's dropping off here. We're probably not going to see a big dip in that today. We see some charging hazards around southern Mexico. And the F2 layer is looking pretty discharged right now. There are your aurora forecasts. Let's look at the synoptic ecliptic plane field plot here on the Gong 2. Give us an idea of the magnetic environment here. Keep in mind the data is a little over an hour old. And the active region we see rising is this one here, which is right near stereo B. And we see the weakness in the magnetometer is going to be associated with this point of field weakness here. So we will see some perturbations in that, although it is going to take another probably about 48 hours for us to cross into the other heliospheric current sheet there. Let's look at the regular view. The top view ecliptic plane field plot. A little easier to visualize things. And also I would note that in the green region associated with the polar North Pole, we see this magnetic fluctuation going on there. That is that sunspot or active region that we see rising. So that's something to keep an eye on. It could change the timing of the crossing of the heliospheric current sheet, which has significant magnetic implications for the Earth. First, we'll look at the velocity of the magnetosphere here. We do see some high-speed magnetospheric velocity here right around the dawn-dusk terminator. See that on the equatorial plane side there on the left. And also we see some disparities between velocity there associated with the magnetotail. Here's the density. We do see some perturbations of high density associated with the South Pole magnetotail there. And here's pressure. We should see something similar there also. I don't know why it does that every day, folks. Must have to do with the timing that it refreshes itself. And you see some perturbations there in the pressure that are still coming in, moving on. And next, let's look at geospace ground perturbations here, starting out at the poles. We see some pretty significant ground perturbations here. And we see the standard issue South Pole leaking into the Indian Ocean, North Pole kind of down into Asia, as well as into the Pacific. Here it is from a better view for those sorts of things. We see some significant magnetism centered around Hawaii, as we do daily, and some pretty strong fields leaking up into the southern Indian Ocean from the South Pole, as we do daily, as well as evidence for a second pole in the north, that is one in Canada and one in Siberia. Next to quakes.globalincidentmap.com. And I can't stress it enough, there is an earthquake drought for 6 and 7 magnitude earthquakes in this region and in this region. To a lesser degree, this region. If you're located in these areas, please have a disaster plan. Just being aware that there could be a disaster is a lot better plan than none at all. If you're an earthquake-prone area and you have no ability to create a plan or a bug-out bag or anything, at least step outside and look up. figure out what may be falling on your head when you exit the building. So we're going back 13 hours. We see what used to be a rare quake, but now happens about once a week on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So we're still experiencing a drought of major earthquakes, people. I mean, very low amount of earthquakes there over that past period. Here's one located right in the warning zone. Only a magnitude 4.9, 5.0 rather. Also, we see one in the South Sandwich Islands, which is a pretty far south location to see an earthquake. Again, that used to be something rare. Now we're seeing it once every 2 weeks or so. And there's a 5.2 at depth in Russia, 91.5 kilometers deep, and a 5.2 magnitude. As we've seen tons of activity out in that region, the Kamchatka Peninsula, the Aleutians, all of Alaska, really. And a 4.9 in the Philippines, just adjacent to the warning area, and they've been seeing significant quakes there recently. Also, Papua New Guinea gets a 4.8. And I clicked on the wrong thing. There we go. There's Papua New Guinea. .0 in Russia just an hour ago. 4.9 in Indonesia. And the last quake of note also in Russia at a 5.0. So a little bit of activity there along that plate boundary. Moving on to volcanodiscovery.com. Today's volcanoes include Shivaluch, producing a 13,000-foot ash plume. Sakurajima, 8,000-foot ash plume there. Dukono, 7,000-foot ash plume there. Fuego, new volcanic emissions there. Poas, which we covered yesterday, looks like it shut down, so volcanic emissions ceased. Revenador, 14,000-foot ash plume. Sabancaya, unable to detect. And Planchon Peteroa, also unable to detect. Next, we'd like to direct you to zooniverse.org, to the Galaxy Zoo section. Few have witnessed what you're about to see. In fact, if you help us to classify galaxies, you may be the first person to see a given galaxy. By the way, this citizen science project has classified over 1.7 million galaxies in the decade the project has been running. Galaxy Zoo volunteers have helped understand the universe and made spectacular discoveries. We hope you'll join us for the next stage of adventure. We're looking to classify galaxies. It has to be done visually because there's too much going on. So we need people to log in, create logins, create logins, passwords, head to the site, classify some galaxies, click Get Started, and there you go. There's a galaxy with a interesting spiral arm pattern. So, does it have features or a disk? Oh yeah. Is it a disk viewed edge on? Oh no. Is there a bar? Well, let's see. Is there a bar? Do we see a bar? Anybody? Anybody? Not really. I'm going to say no bar. Weak bar, if anything. Is there a spiral arm pattern? Well, yes, I'd say that there is a spiral arm pattern. Tight, medium, or loose? Looks like a tight spiral arm pattern. How many arms do we see? Can really only verify 2. Is there a bulge? Let's say small bulge. Is it merging or disturbed? Not that we can tell. And are there rare features such as ring, lens, or arc, irregular, dust lane, overlapping, something else, or nothing unusual? Well, I do see something that appears to be in the background. We're just going to say overlapping. And there you go. There's another galaxy classified. Here's the next one. And this has got some interesting features on it there. I think it's just an overlap, but it looks like a jet also. Will you be the one to classify this galaxy? Head to zooniverse.org. Be that astronomer. Let's head back a little bit closer to Earth. And here is the total electron content forecast. We may pick this up as a new segment. This is associated with all kinds of things such as satellite drag and ion fountaining near the equator, as well as GPS errors. Also, Anomalous Howard, if you're listening, please put up those links that you put in the comments last night on today's video. We'd really appreciate that, because you went down an interesting rabbit hole yesterday directly with NASA. Nice job. Let's look at some articles. How about Zero Hedge? Hey, everybody. You ever want a tactical nuke? Well, I guess the U.S. just obtained some. So, yeah. The W-76-2 is designed to be fitted to a submarine-launched Trident missile, a weapon with a range of more than 7,500 miles. Now, these things only yield about 1/3 of the power of the Hiroshima bomb. So, yeah, there's one article for you. How about also at zerohedge.com? We'll leave links to this one as well. History's 10 most culturally significant dick pic scandals. Let's just read the list. We got Brett Favre. Whoops. Joe Barton. Kim Guilfoyle. Yeah, she's been going around showing other dick pics. Tony Clement. Lars Ohly, whoever that is. Kanye West. Hulk Hogan. Robert Mueller's extremely rumored, extremely alleged possession of individual one's selfie. Anthony Weiner, one of the most famous. And last but not least, Jeff Bezos. Recently giving up $65 billion for it. Congratulations. Next, let's look at an article directly from Cosmos Magazine about this slimy, putrid villain of climate science. Perhaps you recognize him. Penn State's very own Michael Mann. Oh yeah. The most villainous act in the history of human civilization. Michael E. Mann speaks out. Now, what's the most villainous act in the history of human civilization? I don't know. Allowing this guy to work at Penn State University, perhaps? Anyway, Michael Mann is the man behind the infamous made-up hockey stick graph. And he's going to flap his lips in this article over and over again about the more extreme weather that's been happening, you know, the stronger storms, which aren't really a thing. And he's going to really pick up the nonsense dial. This is all because of human emissions, of course. And, yeah, he's, I think he's a fan of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm not exactly sure there. Here's a quote from Professor Mann. There is a substantial truth to what AOC said. She was really paraphrasing the most recent conclusions of the UN Intergovernmental Climate Panel on Climate Change Special Report, which, by the way, does not include most aspects of solar forcing, which basically says that if we're going to limit carbon emissions to below levels that commit us to 2 degrees Celsius, which would be devastating planetary warming, then we have to bring our carbon emissions down 5 to 10% a year for the next decade. Scary stuff. Yeah. Michael Mann, another quote. There are no physical obstacles to averting catastrophic warming of the planet. The only obstacles at this point are political ones, and those are surmountable. Oh yeah, those are surmountable, all right. And there are no physical obstacles to averting the catastrophic warming of the planet except the sun and the rest of the galaxy. Also, by the end of the article, you've got Michael Mann blaming Saudi Arabia, Russia, and Julian Assange for ClimateGate, where he was exposed for cooking the data. Got an article on Science Alert here. All of Europe's mysterious massive stone structures may have one origin source. Those of you in the UK may not appreciate this too much. Turns out the article is suggesting all these monolithic sites were built by the French. We'll leave links to the article also. NASA's Van Allen probe begins final phase of exploration. This one from SciTech Daily. We've had this satellite. It's been repeatedly going through the Van Allen belts. And it's about to retire. If anybody has any links to any data on this one, we'd be more than interested.
Of radiation. These clouds are made of helium, oxygen, and wild protons and electrons.
In any case, it was originally designed as a 2-year mission based on predictions that no spacecraft could operate much longer than that in the harsh radiation belts. And here's an image of the orbits. We'll leave links to the article. If you don't know about the Van Allen belts, watch the video included in the link. Here's another nonsensical article, this one from phys.org. Climate of North American cities will shift hundreds of miles in one generation. In other words, like, for instance, if you're in Washington, in one generation, it'll feel like you're in Arkansas or Texas or something like that. Or if you're in LA, you'll feel like you're at the southern tip of Baja, Mexico for some reason. I don't know what the hell they're talking about or what pathetically garbage models they used to come up with this. But apparently by 2080, you know, if your home city is Denver, you'll feel more like you live in El Paso or something, which is BS. Here's another phys.org article. James Clerk Maxwell Telescope discovers flare 10 billion times more powerful than those on the sun. Probably happens to be a flare star that we're looking right down the pole of. We'll leave links to the article. And last but not least, another phys.org article. Earth's magnetic shield booms like a drum when hit by impulses. Yeah, so I don't know why it's news, but hey, something I would have guessed. So yeah, we'll leave a link to this article also. And what we're talking about here is stuff like this. Oh boy. There you go. That's the kind of waves we're talking about. And it's the solar wind coming in and creating standing waves. Let's mute that before we get our video banned, deleted, etc. Yeah. So that's another article. Feel free to have a read if you find it interesting. Let's go back to the sun here. Well, not literally, because we'd have to wait until nighttime to do that, so it's a little cooler. Looking at it in 304 angstroms here, we see massive filamentary activity. And the one in the northwest is pretty epic. Let's close in. Great view of that one going on. So let that play all the way through. And it's actually still up there, folks. You can watch that one progress throughout the day. Here's one in the northeast. But let's look at this active region because this has a filament in front of it as well. Serious plasma going on. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks for helping us reach 1,000 subscribers. We were surprised enough when we reached 100 subscribers. So we'll be doing it all again tomorrow. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Leave us a comment. We're always taking suggestions for new segments, etc., new information, and so on. We appreciate the financial support as well from our Patreons and from our PayPal donors. So yeah, when you're staring at the sun, don't drink. And if you drink, stare at the sun anyway. Don't drive.